I'm Dave. As I mentioned, I run an agency in London. As a northerner down based in London, it's lovely to be back up here in lovely Manchester. Thank you very much for having me. Today, I think to sort of wake everyone up a bit, I've sort of gone a bit more for like the things not to do on social than the sort of helpful tips. But we're just going to work through some examples of kind of some of the best and the worst of social media, and I'll tell you a bit about what I do and some examples of what we do as a company. So a bit of background about me first. This is me back when I was on MySpace, getting into the social media thing. But then a few years later, my first job in London was as an intern and then a junior news writer at MTV, where my journalistic accolades included dancing with Shaggy. This is me here with Kerry Katona's tongue in my ear. So real sort of highbrow stuff. If there are any Justin Timberlake fans in the audience, it was also me that came up with his nickname, Justin Trouser Snake. So you're welcome for that. Again, real sort of highbrow stuff. But then a few years later, I set up a Twitter account for my local pub. A pub called the Dolphin, which I'll tell you a bit more about shortly. But it led to, it got really popular. Then I started getting asked to tweet for lots of other people and became, as this newspaper article said, the UK's first professional tweeter. So this was my sort of work-life balance before that happened. And then sort of for the past few years, or certainly sort of before I started this company, this was my work-life balance then. So I set up the Twitter account was for a pub called the Dolphin. I'm presuming most of you haven't been to the Dolphin. It's kind of, if you haven't, it's the sort of the Kavos of East London. It's the place that you go and dance to sort of bad 90s R&B and drink Jaeger bombs until 5 in the morning. It's a long story, but set up a Twitter account for it, just as sort of a bit of a joke. And it sort of got quite popular. Let's drink in that picture for a second there. As I say, it did pretty well. I'd been a writer for quite a few years, so I decided to keep it going sort of as a way to learn how to do Twitter and learn sort of what works on social. And then, on the back of that, I started getting asked to tweet for other people, like The Voice. And luckily at the time, when I sort of took over The Voice's Twitter feed, most other TV shows and most of the broadcasters had sort of very boring social media, all sort of sounded the same, all just sort of posting links to watch the show again on iPlayer. But by putting a bit of love and care and attention into it, it did really well. It was sort of the highest number of followers and engagement for the first series of a BBC show ever. And the BBC also loved it because as well as influencers and celebrities tweeting about the TV show, some of them were actually tweeting about the Twitter account, such as Boy George, who said it's clearly a queen running the Twitter account for The Voice. So pleased to say, here she is. And then it was sort of after tweeting for a sort of couple of years as a freelancer for lots of brands and broadcasters, I was speaking at one of Twitter's events, and there was a guy called David Schneider there. Twitter introduced us. We sort of bonded over our love of Twitter and love of not ironing shirts. Bad look at that picture, but some of you might know David. He was one of the writers and one of the actors in Alan Partridge. And various other TV shows, but because of that, for any Alan Partridge fans out there, they'll know he's in a famous scene where Alan has this recurring nightmare. David played the BBC boss, and he kept trying to, in his dream, he kept making the BBC boss smell a wheel of cheese. So the line that everyone keeps shouting at him is "smell my cheese." So most days on Twitter, David gets tweets from people just saying "smell my cheese, smell my cheese, smell my cheese, go on, smell it." The other thing that he gets quite a lot is confused confused with David Schwimmer from Friends, which leads to tweets like this. Loved you as Ross and Friends. Please tell me there'll be a reunion. Yeah, but he's, aside from all that, the main thing that sort of what brought us together is his love of Twitter. He's very good at sort of writing quick, satirical, topical jokes on Twitter and on Facebook, and sort of built a really big following around that. So we decided to start a company, and now we do social for various brands and broadcasters, some of which I'll show you a bit later. So I'm going to go through a few sort of tips and a few do's and don'ts and a few silly examples of social and things that I've seen recently. Firstly, writing for social and tone of voice. So it's a hugely important part of all the social platforms, is getting the tone right and getting the messaging right. And we found sort of there are a few things that sort of tend to make good copy on social. This is one of ours for PG Tips. Don't you wish your boyfriend was hot like tea? Which is not exactly Shakespeare, but the reason it did well and is that it sort of adheres to a few things we've learned about both Twitter copy and Facebook and Instagram, which is keeping it short and keeping it really pithy. So we almost try and write like we're writing headlines. And the key thing, which is one of these sort of wanky things that people bang on about, these sort of things, but is that it's human, and the more kind of personality you can put into your tone, sort of the more likely it is to do well. For Channel 4, aside from posting about their TV shows, something that we do a lot for them on their Facebook and Twitter is just topical stuff that just builds up the page and just gets more people there, just gets more engagement like this that we did for Tim Peake. Nando's, who are one of our clients, a big part of what we do for them is sort of tapping into the human truths around the brand. So it's lucky with Nando's that a lot of people talk about them, particularly there's lots of just funny stories on Twitter and on social already, but it's about taking those stories, finding out what people are talking about you, what people are saying about you, and turning that into social gold, as we call it. So just thinking about how you can leverage that side of things. Being platform specific is something that we really do bang on about, but it's something that I'd say is really worth thinking about. So sort of platform specificity, which is not easy to say, is becoming increasingly important. I'd say one of the biggest the most common mistakes that brands make on social is just making a piece of content and then just like boshing it on all the different platforms, rather than like making sure that it's absolutely created and optimized for each platform. And also just thinking about the different products and the different things that are available that you can use on those platforms. Someone's going to be speaking to you from Facebook after this and go into sort of more detail about some of the things that you can do on there. But one example that we've been having to play with recently is Facebook Canvas, which has worked really well for us. This is one we did for B&Q, and just allows you to get a lot of your sort of brand messaging or sort of a story of a campaign or whatever you wanted to do in one place. It's great because you can have sort of click to buy and stuff right in there, but it's one of their sort of newer products where we found it's definitely something worth having a look at. So if you haven't played with one yet, I'd say give it a go. Snapchat is a sort of a tougher one for brands in some ways, because it's kind of one of those ones where it sort of feels like unless you have a huge amount of money to spend with them sort of on the paid side of things, it can be tricky to get engagement. But with The Apprentice, we recently launched the BBC's first Snapchat channel, and actually tried to do it the organic way, which is the opposite of what Snapchat tell you to do, but it actually worked pretty well. That's made easier for us because of the show, and we just took the highlights from each week's episode and made it very, very Snapchat-y, putting the sort of the filters on and stuff like that. But again, just thinking about how if you're going to do this sort of thing, it needs to be very native and true to that platform. We also recently did the world's first Snapchat drama. It was an extension of sort of the TV show Ackley Bridge. So when the show finished on Channel 4, you then went straight onto Snapchat to watch sort of an additional scene. We filmed one for each episode, which again sort of worked really well and was quite an interesting use of the platform. And And then just always, looking at ways that you can be a bit innovative and interesting and do things there that sort of jump out through people's timelines. One of our team, Amanda, is really good at finding some of these things. She tweeted this picture of a hand, and we were thinking, how the hell did she get 23,000 retweets? And it's because she followed it straight up with this bottom half of her hand, so it looked like the hand was gripping hold of your Twitter timeline, which was sort of, which then got us thinking about how you can do more of that sort of stuff. We call them timeline invasions. We've done a few of them on the different platforms now. This is another one we did for B&Q. They wanted to promote their new type of paint. So we did this 2 different tweets as these sort of videos, as these GIFs, and posted them one after another. So it looked, so you sort of literally taken over people's timelines. So on to some of the sort of sillier stuff. It's great being clever and being innovative and looking for different ways to use the platforms, but it's also just about sometimes finding the golden moments in life that lend themselves to social gold. These are just a few of my favourites that I've seen over the past few months that hopefully you will enjoy, such as this moment when someone noticed that their mum had got a bit confused by a picture of Ewan McGregor. There was this one here, someone else who'd been to an exhibition and noticed that this person bore an uncanny resemblance to an 18th century David Cameron in drag. This one was interesting because it was sort of one of the first times that I'd seen the multiple image used in a way that really brought in unbelievable engagement. This is someone, she's not an influencer or a celebrity, just a normal person who her mate or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it was captured the moment that she was holding this cute frog, and then the frog jumped up and slapped her in the face, which is brilliant because it's a funny moment anyway. But why it's done so well, so spectacularly well, is because that whole story has been told through the multiple image thing, which is something now you can do on Twitter and on Facebook, and it's just worth thinking about how you can turn that into a story. This was one of our team recently who captured a moment that sort of we've all had. Boots, the agony of choice. Do you go family planning or crisps? And then this was someone who sent their granddad to get some passport photos done, and I think he got a little bit confused by which buttons to press. So just thinking about how sometimes it's the magic moments in everyday life that lend themselves to social gold. I also like this recently. Social media, of course, is a great distraction. That's part of why a lot of us love it, and that's a great thing. But sometimes that can be tricky when you're trying to get some work done. This person approached that very creatively when they added Harry Potter and to the start of the role of accounting in the public expenditure and monetary policy in the 1st century in Roman Empire, which was a clever little moment. It's worth remembering that not everyone gets social media. I'm sure all you guys are brilliant at it, but I think it's worth sort of looking at some examples of when people have got it wrong. This was on Facebook recently, something that really amused us, when someone I mean, it sounds sad, and I'm sorry to bring the tone down, but bear with it. This person posed, "Hello everyone, I'm terribly sorry to post this. My Uncle Scott passed away this week. What I know is that he loved our Lord and will be spending an Easter in his presence that we can only imagine. I will miss him so much." Very sad, and that is not the funny bit, do not worry. But then the first comment that came back was, "Roar, I am a zombie raised from the dead," from Scott. And you're thinking, what's going on here? And this is Scott. Haha, no, seriously, this is Dan, just deleting Dad's old Facebook account. Now, obviously, this is a great way that Dan has chosen to sort of deal with the sad passing of his father. So obviously, that is fine, but perhaps that is not the best way to deal with such a type of grief. This is another one which I liked. Again, Facebook, where this guy, David, tweeted, "Where to buy chicken casserole supplies?" To which Stephen replied, "Dad, this is Facebook, not Google. Try again." Dad then responds, "Where to buy chicken casserole supplies?" And still not quite getting his head around it. Stephen, "Dad, no. Where to buy supplies for chicken casserole?" Try and sort of mixing it up a little bit. WTF, are you serious? Chicken casserole supply store. And by this point, he's given up. Fiesta Mart, 8130 Kirby Drive. So just remember how to use the different platforms. The power of engagement. So Obviously, a big part of social is how you talk to people, your fans or followers, or people you want to be your fans and followers or customers. And we're finding actually this is the side of social that is becoming sort of more and more powerful. A couple of examples here of things that tickled me, and as an example of one of ours. This recently was Jon Snow who posted, this was on Twitter. It was a really, really good campaign called Just a Tampon. Support the effort to stop taxing a female necessity. Text tampon to 7007 to donate £3 to Plan UK. Great, and that's a great cause, and you would imagine no one would take issue with that. Except on social, you always get people that see things a little bit differently. Someone responds, why? Many other necessities of life are taxed. Someone pipes in, because it's a necessity of life that only women have to pay for, so a tax on being a woman. Fair point. To which he responds, good, there are plenty of man taxes, which of course led to the question, what male-only taxes are there? Now, this response was something of an eye-opener to me, but hopefully you will enjoy it. Trousers. That man-only tax, trousers. This is another one I enjoyed recently. You have to remember that social media is often the place where people reach out for help. This was a bit of an emergency where someone tweeted at Tea in the Park, hi, I'm somewhere in Green 7. Someone has packed me into a tent bag for a joke and I can't get out and I don't have much battery left. So obviously just worth remembering that if you're doing a social for Tea in the Park, monitor these type of things and make sure you are freeing your customers. This is one we had for Nando's recently when this guy tweeted at Nando's, hi Nando's, me and my mate were just in your Meadowhall store and this dream bird served us. Can you hook us up with her details, please? To which we responded, sure, her name is No Chance, mate. Which, again, sort of is not, it's just sort of silly copy, but because it was a brand showing, not taking themselves too seriously, and because it was sort of done in the same sort of cheeky tone of voice, it did really, really well, considering it was just a reply with, no spend behind it or anything, so that was good. This is one I enjoyed, it's not one of ours, one I enjoyed when someone tweeted at Argos, I think it was last year, saying, yo, when you getting PS4 things in Moss Side, ain't waiting no more, plus the Asian guy who works there got bare attitude, hashtag waste man. This was from Imi Badman Bugty. He tweeted at Argos. Now, what a lot of brands would do in this sort of scenario and still do now is be very, very serious. Oh, bad man, we're so sorry for that, and get very serious about it. Instead of that, Argos chose to respond in his tone of, or in his argot, you could say, by saying, safe bad man, we're getting some more PS4 things within the next week, you get me? Sol's bad attitude, Prob's having a bad day, yo. Which, as far as I can tell from what I read, this is their most engaged tweet they've ever had, and considering it's just a reply from Argos helpers, just shows you again of how if you engage with people in the right way, and sort of have the right amount of personality and the right side of sort of humanity in there, it can do really well. But also you've got to remember, I hate to use the B word, but the power of banter on social and how if you sort of get that right, it can really sort of catch fire. This is one we sort of quite like. We've got an ongoing sort of back and forth between Channel 4 for our accounts and ITV2, and so during Lent we decided to tweet at them saying, hey ITV2, have you considered giving up bad shows for Lent? Ooh, the shade. But yeah, it's that sort of level of bants that can do quite well. Is social media making us stupid? I hope not, but there are obviously lots of examples of where that would seem so. Just pulled out a couple of really, really silly ones. This is one that we noticed recently that other David found. Does it take 18 months for twins to be born or 9? That was a great tweet. On a similar sort of theme, this was a Facebook post where someone, my sister's pregnant, I can't wait to find out if I'm going to be an aunt or an uncle. But yes, obviously that's just some of the lighter side of social. Zingers, so this is again, it's back to the writing side of things where it's just sometimes it's great having, thinking of what you can do with video, what you can do with design, what you can do with the platform, but sometimes it's just about writing a good or really silly joke. So we've hired a bunch of writers now, people who we love who are doing great stuff on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram, Snapchat, and brought them into the team. And a lot of them are just brilliant writers, so I just thought I'd share some of their work with you. This is Amanda, who tweeted, the inventor of the anagram has died. May he erect a penis. That feels a bit early for that kind of time. Is it possible to impeach a president before they're inaugurated? Asking for 390 million friends. This is Andrea. Marty, me, I'll see you in a month. Wife, don't forget to write me Italian like I forget such a basic skill, Sharon. And this is sort of using one of the things that I like on Twitter, where it's kind of sort of that way you're telling a story within the 140 characters. And this is something that brands have started embracing more, kind of hiring, as well as agencies, just hiring writers themselves in-house that can sort of bring some of this personality to the brand. One of these brands that I like that does this is Arena Flowers, and they very rarely post about flowers. They mainly just post really retweetable, really relatable jokes. This is one which I enjoyed. When you're asked what your weaknesses are at a job interview, look lovingly into their eyes, place your hands on theirs and say you, which is a good tip. But of course, it is really important, as social becomes increasingly a visual platform, it's really important, visual sort of medium, it's important that you use as many images and videos as possible, and that's where sort of the real engagement is. These are a few that I've just found of just sort of funny things that people have either turned into images or that they have taken. This is one I liked recently. All right, stop, refrigerate, and listen. And they have the picture, if you can't see it, is ice pastry that they found in the supermarket. Next one was someone who noticed that imagine the trouble she has introducing herself to friends. This was a Facebook profile of someone called Gemma Pell. This one, great, even better because it's in Manchester. Just for any of you that aren't Oasis fans, you might not get this, but what he's done here, I just think it's genius. He's at The Punning Man, who I definitely recommend following. He's found on Groupon this deal that bears an uncanny resemblance to the second line in an Oasis song, which you'll appreciate better when I sing it terribly. Today is going to be the day that they're going to throw it back to you. Buy now, Prosecco and a wow burlesque show plus a meal for two, which is, of course, a masterpiece, and go Manchester. This is one we did for Freeview during Eurovision a couple of weeks ago. Want to feel old? This is what Books Fizz look like now. And it's the sort of thing, again, it's worth mentioning, ongoing social formats. So we've got quite a few of these now on Twitter and Facebook. Types of jokes and types of posts that you can keep sort of recycling, and as in, so the want to feel old one is one that obviously loads of people use, but it's really easy for you to sort of jump into that and make it relevant to your brand. I'm not sure why I put it in, it just amused me. Someone who would liken their son's poo face to Donald Trump's face, but it's thinking how you can make sort of topical content out of stuff that is happening every day. Obviously, a sort of type of person that is good to learn from on social celebrities. You've got celebrities doing some of the best stuff, and you've got celebrities doing some of the worst stuff. I, of course, have picked out the worst stuff. This is one example which I loved, which was when Lindsay Lohan decided to announce her arrival on Twitter by saying, "Hello, Facebook. Yes, it's actually Lindsay. Welcome to my Facebook page," where something has gone a bit wrong there. One that I'm sure most of you that are on Twitter know this already, but if any of you don't, this has gone down in Twitter, stuff of Twitter legend, when Ed Balls was trying to search on Twitter for what people were tweeting about him, and he accidentally tweeted his own name. And because of that now, every year on that same day, it's Ed Balls Day, where brands and celebrities and businesses just tweet their own name. So he has created an excellent thing out of being a bit stupid. Someone who is exceptional on social, particularly Twitter, but I'm not a fan of his music, and apologies, I'm sure some of you a lot of you have seen him already, but if you haven't seen what James Blunt does on Twitter, yeah, I sound like a lot of you have, but for those that haven't, he is definitely should be your next follow. My favorite thing about him is he searches on Twitter for people who are slagging him off, which unsurprisingly is a lot of people, and then he responds to them. But again, a bit like Argos, instead of being very like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've offended you," he's just very, blunt about his responses. Let's have a look at one. So here's someone, Hetty Jones, tweeted, "James Blunt has an annoying face and a highly irritating voice. Both fair points in my opinion," but to which he responded, "and no mortgage." And it's sort of, he's been doing this for the past few sort of year or so, over the time that he's had an album out, and he's talked about how he's sort of really built up a lot more of a following just because of this that he's been doing on Twitter. He also was responsible for one of my favourite tweets of last year. Last year was horrible for lots of reasons, and he decided to tweet, if you thought 2016 was bad, I'm releasing an album in 2017. So yes, I have to put my hands up and say, follow James Blunt. Videos. So sometimes, there's sort of different, lots of different things to say about video. One of the biggest things we do, so our main client is Channel 4, and the main thing that they care about is Facebook video. So we sort of make now sort of 2 or 3 videos a day for them, and it's all the sort of tips there that we found. It's all about kind of making it as relatable as possible. It's about how you need to really think about the space. We were talking earlier about whether you post in sort of portrait or landscape. You need a really strong opening. It's got to work on mute because a lot of people watch video on mute, although I can see now that the auto audio thing is coming in, which is interesting. But lots of different tips, but today I've just gone, again, sort of to wake everyone up for some of the sillier, funny side of video. It's worth noting that, with sort of Facebook, Instagram, with all the platforms really now, video seems to be where it's at in terms of getting the engagement, and it's worth thinking about how either if you've got the capacity to make and create your own videos, brilliant in terms of sort of editing, but even if it's just filming stuff on your phone, it's definitely worth embracing, and that's sort of where a lot of the big numbers are. As I say, we're just going to look at some that have made me laugh recently. This is a guy who, I think he's a comedian. He went into a toy shop. He found this little toy duck and realised, because of the sound of it, that if you press them all down together, he would call them his duck army. Which I quite liked. Enjoy that one more time. Yeah. So I suppose that's an example of where it's nothing, there's no editing, it's just a silly little thing, but got really good engagement. It's just more about the idea. This next one is the much more sort of requires obviously editing and a really clever idea, but I just thought it was absolute genius. This is one of the many types of video that I've seen that have been done around Donald Trump. Someone noticed that just the way the hand gesticulations that Donald Trump does looked almost like he was playing an imaginary accordion, so he decided to edit in an accordion to some of his speeches. Let's have a look at that.
Everything else that was hacked, we said, well, they didn't make a big deal out of that. I'll be honest, I think if he did have something, they would have released it, they would have been glad to release it. I don't want to take advantage of something. I have something that others don't have. I don't like the way that looks, but I would be able to do that if I wanted to. I'd be the only one that would be able to do that. If we wanted to, I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict.
You get the idea. But yeah, clever stuff.
Tremendous service by
This next one, right, you have to stick with it, and it's going to take a minute. Hopefully I'm all right for time. But this was just one of the, again, it's back to these magic moments that happen and how they can come to life on Twitter and Facebook and all the platforms. This is a guy who has noticed, but singing certain songs to his birds, after a while they really get into it. So if you're happy to enjoy a minute of this, it gets good in about 45 seconds. Hold on. He's warming up. Here we go. Yeah, take it away. It's a head-banging bird. Yeah. I said yeah. You're really getting into it. There you go. So yeah, there was no real reason to show that other than it is funny. But yeah, just thinking about the power of social video. What a great example of that. So GIFs obviously is really important, thinking about how you can use those as well. Another great way to get engagement. And some of them can be sort of the more creative side of things. So for the voice, we've done quite a few of them where we've got one of our illustrators to draw the different voice coaches, and then sort of we've animated them. So it's the sort of illustrated animated GIF like this. And sort of these require a bit more thought and planning, but it's because it's a bit different, they can really capture people's attention and really get decent engagement. And we've also used GIFs to tell stories quite a few times. So we did this one on Facebook, which was the week before Christmas, when we knew everyone was going to office Christmas parties. We decided to make this video telling the story of an average night of an office Christmas party, but as told with the help of a bunch of famous GIFs. Oh, there should be sound, but doesn't matter if not. You get the idea, but just worth thinking of how you can use these different GIFs in different ways to make content out of. There you go. So yes, be topical. And I've shown a few examples already, but it's worth thinking about how you can tap into the conversations that people are having on social and put your brand spin on it, or just something that's going to get engagement for you. And it's something we do a lot of. As I say, this is particularly other David's side of things. It's something that he's particularly adept at and does a lot. And this is an example of one of his biggest tweets to date. This is during the Lance Armstrong scandal. He tweeted, "This Lance Armstrong isn't even the worst fender in cycling history. Look at this guy, what the hell was he on?" And then followed it up with this picture here. This is something that, sort of using his skills, we do a lot of those. And now we run Have I Got News For You, Twitter and Facebook. And obviously that is all just about coming up with sort of topical funnies like they do in the show. And some of these are image-based, like this one we did, Kim Jong-un makes further demands on Hollywood. Sometimes sort of gets a little bit more, a little darker, like showing now in cinemas across France, Les Miserables, when they all did particularly badly. Sometimes for brands, thinking about, again, just sort of how you can come up with stuff that is going to get engagement. This was on deadline day when Chelsea signed a player that people didn't really know. But it's also, where possible, about how you can make it about your brand or about a product. Nando's are really keen for us to, when we do topical stuff, put a Nando's spin on it. So on Mother's Day, we decided to go and film do a photo shoot of a chicken bouquet for Mother's Day, which was kind of an odd way to spend a morning taking photos of chicken. But eventually we got a shot that looked vaguely like a bouquet of flowers and did well, because it was kind of, again, it's topical, but putting a brand spin on it. But don't feel you have to say something. There are lots of examples of brands and broadcasters getting it very wrong. This is one example that I thought it showed just because it was just so bad. Crocs decided to pay tribute to one of the greatest artists of all time, David Bowie, by saying, "Your magic will be missed, but your inspiration lives on forever." # David Bowie. And then, don't know if you can see it there, but they've put his trademark Thunder on one of their Crocs. Now, I never met David Bowie, unfortunately, but I'm going to guess he probably wasn't a big Crocs wearer. So I'm not sure if putting your brand as part of the sort of paying tribute to him was the right thing to do. And I'm just going to leave you with sort of a look at one of my favorite things about social media, and I've seen it quite a few times recently happening on Facebook and Twitter, where with all the awful stuff that's sort of going on in the world and all the sort of the doom and gloom, and sometimes social can be bad for that as well. But I just love the fact that there are, increasingly when people are angry or they're bullying, or you often now see people rallying together against the evil. This is two examples of it, both of which I thought were outstanding. One was when these lads here tweeted Everton saying, we'll be waiting for your boys tomorrow, COI, which I think is the Cornu Irons, they're West Ham, and obviously they've posed with these various different weapons, so pretty scary and, you know, and not what football and sport should be about. But because perhaps they don't look like the most sort of, you know, hard bunch of lads, and because they chose to do this so publicly, it became something not as what they planned for. Someone quickly responded, is he meant to carry something? Because the guy on the right was the only one not carrying something. And then on the back of that, cue a lot of about 2 hours worth of people photoshopping different things into their hands, such as this here, when someone decided to give him a pizza to be holding. There was this person here who ingeniously gave him a massive fish. This went on for ages. Then there was people doing shots of all of them. It's hard to see there, but if you can't see, he's juggling instead whilst the other guys have their weapons. This is one where he's holding Lidl bags. And yeah, so getting increasingly less hard. And not only was it brilliant and funny because people were ridiculing them, it was also great because they were also in trouble for it. The Met Police tweeted saying, thanks for making us aware. It had been reported, so they actually did get in trouble and massively ridiculed, and one of them was holding a fish. So totally brilliant. And then my final thing to leave you with, on very similar note, this was another one on Facebook more recently when this very glamorous, good-looking couple here posted, I don't know if some of you saw this, my best friend's sister just got engaged, she's the one in the photo. Basically, they took this picture just after they got engaged, but there's a guy in the background, and they asked if anyone on Facebook could help them Photoshop the guy out from the back because he's not glamorous enough to be in their photo, rather than just waiting for him, you know, taking a photo when someone wasn't in the background. And again, social media and Facebook and Twitter, the people on those platforms tend not to like it when you're bullying someone. So they decided to respond by being a bit more creative about it. Someone photoshopped the Pulp Fiction character. There's Mr. Bean coming out of a plant. I don't know if you can see that there. There's a dog coming in on a wrecking ball. This person here has turned him into 5 versions of the guy. Gets slightly weirder after that, I think. This is where they've swapped the girl around and they put this guy on the lap. Yeah, so I suppose that was my final thing to leave you with, which is often social media can be a beautiful thing. And on that note, I am going to say, yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Manchester, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Oh, yes. Any questions?
Has anyone got any questions for David?
I can't really see anything, but we do have a box mic somewhere.
Hello.
Is that a microphone? Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
Have you ever got in trouble for any of your social media posts for your clients?
That is a great question. Yeah, which ones can I tell you about? So, The Apprentice was a good one. I remember the first series that I was running the Twitter and Facebook for The Apprentice. There was it's about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. There was one of the, I don't know if you watch it, but one of the guys on there, like they often are, was this really posh, really arrogant guy. And before the series started, I got them all to do a little questionnaire of facts about them, which I could post out during the show. And one of them was, what's your least favorite body part? It was your favorite and least favorite. And for his least favorite, he said, my wattle, which, being as I am a guy from Leeds and not particularly posh, didn't really know what a wattle was, and jumped to the probably hasty conclusion that he was talking about his genitalia, when apparently if you grew up on a farm, or if you're, is actually the flabby bit under your chin or something. But having not Googled it, at the moment in the show when he was getting a tender massage from one of the other apprentice candidates and he was being a bit of an idiot, I decided to tweet out, little do you know that this is all very wonderful and he's being very confident, but Jordan's least favourite body part is his penis. got loads of engagement as it would do, and then about 4 minutes later I had a call from the exec of the show who had Jordan on the phone wondering why I was posting about his penis. And yeah, that got a bit awkward, yeah. So I'd say that is one. There are others, but that's probably the worst one.
Excellent. Any more questions for David?
That is awesome.
Hi. Yeah. Well, I feel that we can all relate to the B2C examples that you've got. We work in a bit more of a drier sort of B2B environment. Have you got any good examples of social campaigns that you've done?
Interesting. To be honest with you, it's been 99%. We tend to sort of do the bigger brand stuff and bigger broadcasters. In terms of, it's a question that's come up before. I think a lot of the stuff that, a lot of the same things that make good content and on B2C, the same B2B in terms of like good copy, using video, using images. Which sector are you in? What type of?
We do scientific marketing.
Okay. And do you find it sort of, is it a tricky area for you to do? Which platforms are you mainly on?
We're on Twitter. So for clients, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah. I suppose the thing with B2B on social media, it's different. It depends which platform, particularly Twitter and Facebook. It's worth sort of remembering, and even predominantly Twitter, that B2B doesn't really exist because you're on an open platform. So it's kind of, I still think you have to adhere to the same types of things I'm talking about, good copy, embracing video, embracing images and GIFs and stuff, because anyone can see it, even though you want only the sort of specific sector to see it. What I would say as a bit of advice, which I haven't included today, is thinking about live. So we do quite a lot of Facebook Lives now, particularly for Channel 4, and presumably in your sector you must have access to incredibly brilliant, smart science people. And actually I would say when we've done science-based stuff before, and like the nerdier the better, like social media loves real geekery. So I would feel like being able, if you have, I don't know if you've done any, but doing some Facebook Lives with bringing sort of some of that expertise to life live, I think would be great. But I'll have to have a think about some great examples of some good B2B stuff. Maybe some of these other guys will know. Sorry for that underwhelming answer.
You have one more question for David?
What's a good way to connect with baby boomers?
Oh, baby boomers. As in just generally how to like appeal to a younger audience. Yeah.
To the older generation, how to connect with them?
Oh, to the old generation. Sorry, I'm unfamiliar with the baby boomers term. In what it depends which.
So it's
sort
kind of 55 plus.
Yeah.
On sort of to 80 and that.
I mean, so an example I would give, probably the best example I can think of is we've done a lot of social stuff for Radio 4, which I guess is listened to predominantly by baby boomers, my new term, and I think a lot of that has been about sort of looking at the types of things that they're likely to engage with. So the biggest thing we've ever done for them was we live tweeted on New Year's Day. They read out all of War and Peace on air, and we live tweeted along with it. So we kind of turned moments from the book into sort of memes that worked well on Twitter. It was also done on Facebook as well. And just thinking about the types of, types of tone and types of content that are more likely to appeal to them. Is there a particular area that you're looking to attract more of these baby boomers, or just in general? Lifts? Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, like a stair lift type thing. Okay. Well, that does sound exciting. I mean, it sounds. Firstly, I don't know how sort of light-hearted you're ever happy to be with it, but it does sound like you definitely could. I mean, if you haven't done video, it sounds like it lends itself well to good content. Perhaps, I mean, I don't know if you could have someone like being interviewed on one of the this needs some work, I think. I would say that we have found, particularly, and I bet you get some good insight from the next speaker, but with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, from what we have seen, have all seen a big increase in older audiences. So I think it's sort of happening anyway. There are more people there. I think it's just thinking about what types of content. I think also it's, you know, in the same way that we use influencers tend to be seen in terms of, you know, a 19-year-old in their bedroom, but actually there are lots of brilliant older influencers that you can use to sort of appeal to that as well. I think it's also about tapping into different shows and different broadcasters that have got some of that audience, but I will need to have more of a think and come up with a better idea than interviewing someone on a stair lift. It's not even a stair lift. What an odd way to end this talk. But yes, thank you very much.
Okay,
any more
thank you
questions?
very much,
No.
David. No,
No.
I assume you're going to hang around for
Yeah,
a
hang
bit,
around.
but after the next session, there's a coffee break, so if anyone's got any more questions for David, call her in.
Cool. Cheers. Thank you.
So,
Oh.
let's round of applause.